You pull up to the job site before the sun is even up. The crane won't lift. The screen is glowing red with a fault code you have never seen in your life. And the only man alive who can clear it is 200 miles away, and he starts charging you by the hour the second he pulls out of the dealership lot. I know that feeling because I helped build it. Here is the thing nobody in my old business ever wanted you to hear. The American cranes I used to sell were not built to outlast the ones coming out of Germany and Austria. They were built to keep you coming back. And the European iron I once told customers was overpriced and overbuilt doesn't just lift more than ours ever could. It treats you like a man who actually owns the machine he paid for. I spent years on the inside of this. I sold the promise across the desk. I signed the invoices. I watched what the lock screen did to men who trusted me with the biggest purchase of their working lives. Before we're done tonight, I'm going to show you a federal law signed in 1975 that my old bosses prayed you would never read. A law that can protect your warranty even when you turn your own wrench. And if you're sitting there right now with a machine that's already locked down, staying grounded on a code you can't clear, this is built for you, not just for the man shopping for his next crane. I still remember the day it cracked for me. A concrete outfit out of West Texas, good people, 3 generations. Their rough terrain crane went dead on a bridge pour, and I stood in that dust and did the math out loud on what the reset alone was going to cost them. The owner looked at me like I'd betrayed him. And the worst part is, let me take you back to the moment I first understood what we were really selling. For years I thought I was in the business of steel. Booms, outriggers, load charts, counterweights. That's what I believed I sold. That's what the brochure said. Big, honest American iron for big, honest American work. But somewhere in the last 15 years, the steel stopped being the product. The software became the product. And the steel became the thing that held the software hostage. The first time it hit me was a rated capacity system fault. If you run cranes, you know the box I mean. The load moment indicator. The safety computer that tells the machine how much it can lift before it tips. On paper, it's there to keep your operator alive, and it does. I would never tell you that system is a bad idea. It's a good idea. That's exactly why it was the perfect place to hide the leash. Because here's what changed. That safety computer used to be a sensor and a gauge. Then it became a lock controller. And once it was locked, the manufacturer decided that almost any fault in that system would not just warn the operator, it would derate the crane or shut the lift down entirely until an authorized technician plugged in an authorized laptop with an authorized code. Not a mechanic, not you, not the operator with 30 years on the sticks, only a man carrying their software key. I had a customer whose crane threw a fault because of a bad angle sensor, a part that cost less than a good pair of work boots. The sensor wasn't dangerous. The boom was fine, but the computer wouldn't let the machine work until a factory tech drove out, plugged in, and cleared it. The sensor was $40. The visit was over $1,200 by the time the truck rolled back to the shop, and the crane sat dead for 2 days waiting on that truck. 2 days. On a crane that rents for somewhere between $1,500 and $3,000 a day, depending on the class. You do that math and you understand why grown men were calling me with shake in their voice. That's the moment the tension changes for a lot of owners. It stops being about the repair. It becomes about the fact that you are not allowed to do the repair. Somebody decided that for you, and they decided it in a boardroom, and they wrote it into the firmware before the machine ever left the factory floor. I told myself it was about safety. That's the word we always reach for. Safety, liability, compliance. And some of it was. But the longer I sat in those sales meetings, the more I understood that the safety story was the wrapper. The lock was the product. Because if it were only about safety, they would let you fix it and then run a certified test. They wouldn't need to keep the key 200 miles away. Therefore, it was never only about safety. It was about who holds the key. And whoever holds the key holds the invoice. So how did we get here? How did an industry built by men who could weld a boom back together in a field turn into an industry where you can't clear a sensor fault in your own yard? Let me walk you through the way the trap was actually built, because it didn't happen all at once. It happened one reasonable sounding step at a time. It started with the engines. When the emissions rules tightened through the 2000s and into the 2010s, every diesel machine on Earth got a computer bolted to it. Tier 4 emissions, exhaust fluid systems, sensors on everything. That part was the law. Nobody in the crane business chose that. But the manufacturers looked at all that new wiring and all those new controllers, and they saw an opportunity that had nothing to do with clean air. They saw a network. Every part of the machine now talked to every other part over a data line. And once everything is talking, you can decide who's allowed to listen. You can decide who's allowed to give orders. So they built the diagnostic system as a closed door. On the old cranes, a fault was a light in a book. You looked up the code, you found the problem, you fixed it. On the new ones, the real codes, the deep codes, the ones that actually shut you down, only show their full meaning to the dealer's laptop. The owner sees a number, the dealer sees the story, and the dealer charges you for the translation. I watched the training change over those years. Early on, we trained customers. We wanted the guy who bought the crane to be able to keep it running, because a running crane made him money, and a happy customer bought another crane. Then the message flipped. Suddenly, the training was about steering everything back to the service department. Service was no longer support for the sale. Service became the profit center. TT came the bait. There are numbers behind this that made my stomach turn once I saw them laid out. Across the heavy equipment world, dealer service and parts routinely carry gross margins 2 and 3 times higher than the margin on the machine itself. The crane is the loss leader. You are the annuity. They don't make the real money the day you sign. They make it every day for the next 20 years that you cannot fix your own machine without them. And they protected that annuity with the software lock. That's the whole game. And if you want the full picture laid out in one place, I've put it in a book. It's called Fixed or Owned. And inside I go deeper on how the lock was engineered, which machines are the worst offenders, and exactly what your rights are under the laws that already exist to protect you. I also get into Break the Lock, the section built specifically for owners who are done waiting on a service truck and ready to take real control of their iron. You can find it linked in the description below. It's the resource I wish I could have handed to every customer I let down across the desk. Now, back to the machine you already own, because this next part is built for the man who feels trapped in the iron he already paid for. And they protected that annuity with the software lock. You have turned a tool the customer owns into a machine the customer merely rents from himself. The federal government actually looked at this. In 2021, the Federal Trade Commission put out a report to Congress called Nixing the Fix. And in plain language, that report found that manufacturers across many industries were making repairs harder, steering customers to their own service networks, and that there was scant evidence any of it was truly justified by safety or quality. Scant evidence. That was the government's own word for the safety excuse I used to repeat with a straight face. So now you understand the lock. But here's the question that finally broke my loyalty, and it's the one that changed how I look at every machine on a job site. If our machines were really the best in the world, why did they need to trap you to keep you? Because the honest answer is they aren't the best in the world, not even close. And I didn't want to admit that for a long time. Let me tell you about the first time I stood next to a Liebherr. If you don't run cranes, that name might not mean much. Liebherr is a family company out of Germany and Switzerland, started back in 1949 by a man who built his first machine to help rebuild a country in rubble, family-owned to this day. And when you stand next to their big all-terrain cranes, you understand very quickly why so many operators talk about them the way old-timers talk about a truck that never let them down. I had spent my whole career telling customers that European cranes were over-engineered, too expensive, too complicated, too foreign for American work. That was the script, and I believed the script, because believing it was my job. Then I watched one work. Here's what makes them make our machines look like playthings, and I'm going to be specific because specifics are the only thing that matter here. Liebherr's big all-terrain cranes run a single engine that both drives the machine down the road and powers the crane work up top. A lot of the competition needed 2 engines to do the same job. One engine means less weight, less fuel, fewer things to break, and a simpler machine. That's not a gimmick. That's decades of engineering discipline that our side kept promising and kept not delivering. Then there's the outrigger technology. Liebherr has a system where the outriggers can be set at different positions and lengths, and the crane's computer recalculates the exact safe load for that real setup in real time in a tight space. That means you can rig safely on a job site where an American crane would have to walk away. More lifting capacity out of the same footprint on the same ground because the engineering is simply better. Operators who have run both will tell you the difference is not small. It is the difference between getting the pick done and going home. And it isn't just the Germans. Look at what happened in 2019 when Tadano, a Japanese company, bought Demag, one of the great old German crane names. The best of European boom engineering folded into a company obsessed with reliability. Meanwhile, some of the storied American names got swallowed into big holding companies where the men counting the money had never set foot on a job site before 9 in the morning. Now here's the part that really turned me. It isn't just that the European iron lifts more, it's the attitude that comes with it. The European machines were built in a place where the law and the culture assume that the man who buys the machine has the right to understand it. Their whole industrial world runs on the idea that an owner and an independent shop should be able to keep the thing alive. It bleeds into how the machines are built, how the manuals are written, how much they trust the operator. Our machines were built in a place where the lawyers got to the engineers first. So the crane that costs more up front, the European one I used to mock, ends up costing less to own over 10 years because it runs more days, burns less fuel, holds its value better, and doesn't hold you hostage every time a cheap sensor hiccups. I've watched the resale numbers. Well-kept European all-terrain cranes hold their value in a way that made my old inventory look like it was melting on the lot. I sold against those machines for years. And every argument I used, I now know was protecting the lock, not the customer. But maybe you're sitting there thinking none of this helps you. Maybe you already own the American machine. Maybe it's parked outside right now with a code on the screen, and you're thinking this whole video is just salt in the wound for a man who can't afford to go run out and buy a German crane. Stop! This next part is for you specifically. The man who feels trapped in the iron he already owns. I built this section for you because you are exactly the man my old business counted on to feel helpless and just keep paying. So let me give you something real to do this week. First thing, understand that most of these machines, no matter whose name is on the side, speak a common language underneath the proprietary skin. The engine and most of the drivetrain talk over a public standard the whole industry uses, a diagnostic language that is not secret and not owned by your dealer. There are independent diagnostic tools you can buy that read those codes off that common line, and they cost a fraction of what a single dealer service call costs. That tool won't unlock every proprietary calibration. I won't lie to you about that, but it will tell you what's actually wrong before you ever pay a man to tell you. Half the visits I used to write up were pure diagnosis. You just took that money back. Second thing, find the independent crane and heavy equipment shops in your region and build the relationship before you need it, not during a breakdown. These shops exist. Many of them are staffed by the exact technicians who used to work for the dealer and got sick of the same thing you're sick of. They keep the calibration tools, they keep the knowledge, and they charge like human beings. The manufacturers do not advertise these people to you. You have to go find them, and the time to find them is a slow Tuesday, not a dead crane on a Friday pour. Third thing, and write this one down. There is a network of owners and operators trading this exact knowledge right now in the forums and the online groups, posting the codes, the sensor part numbers, the workarounds, the shops that will actually help you. When I first found those threads, I felt physically sick because I saw men helping each other for free with information my industry was charging $1,000 to withhold. Every code you can't decipher tonight, somebody in one of those groups has already fought and beaten. Go read them. Post your fault number. You are not the first person to see it. And fourth, start writing down your real cost of ownership. Every dealer visit, every downtime day, every reset fee, put it on paper for a year. Because the day you go to replace that machine, that paper is the argument for walking into the European or the independent option with your eyes open, instead of getting talked back into the lock by a man reading the same script I used to read. None of that requires you to buy a new crane. All of it takes back a piece of the control that was quietly taken from you. But here is the thing I promised you at the start. The single most powerful tool you have is not a laptop or a forum. It's a law. And it's been sitting there on the books for 50 years. This is the part my old bosses genuinely did not want you to know, so let me tell it to you the way I wish somebody had told those folks in West Texas. There is a federal law called the Magnuson-Moss Warranty Act. It was signed in 1975, 50 years ago, longer than a lot of these dealerships have existed. And here is what it says. In plain talk, a manufacturer cannot void your warranty just because you used an independent shop or an aftermarket part unless they can prove that shop or that part actually caused the failure. And they cannot require you to use only their branded parts and their branded service to keep your warranty valid, unless they are giving you those parts and that service for free. Read that again. They cannot tie your warranty to their service department unless they're doing it for nothing. That is the law. It has been the law your entire working life. You know those implied threats? The service writer who leans across the counter and tells you that if you let anyone else touch this machine, your warranty is gone. The line in the conversation that keeps you scared to open your own hood. I said versions of that myself. And under Magnuson-Moss, a blanket threat like that is not just aggressive. In a lot of cases, it is flatly illegal. The Federal Trade Commission has said so out loud more than once. In 2018, the FTC sent formal warning letters to major manufacturers telling them to knock off the language that tied warranties to using only branded parts and authorized service, because that language violated the Magnuson-Moss Act. And in 2022, the FTC came back around and said it would step up enforcement against exactly these illegal warranty tie-ins. This is not a theory somebody floated on a forum. This is the federal government telling these companies to stop doing the thing they've been quietly doing to you. Here's how you use it this week, for free. When a dealer tells you a repair must go through them or your warranty dies, you ask one question, and you ask it in writing. You ask them to state in writing the specific provision that requires factory-only service, and to confirm whether they are providing that service and those parts at no charge. Watch what happens, because they can't put it in writing. The moment you ask for the threat on paper, the threat tends to evaporate, because the man making it knows it doesn't survive contact with that 50-year-old law. And if you want the real hammer, you find the FTC's own guidance on warranty rights, the plain language pages they publish for consumers. Print it and keep a copy in the cab. When the service writer starts the speech, you set it on the counter. I have seen that single sheet of paper change the entire tone of a conversation, because now the man across the counter knows that you know. That is the thing that was buried. Not buried in the sense that it was hidden in a vault, buried in the sense that it was drowned. Drowned under 1,000 service writers repeating a script under fine print designed to make you feel like the machine was never really yours. The knowledge existed the whole time. The right existed the whole time. A handful of consumer advocates and repair groups kept it alive while my industry talked over it. And now it's in your hands tonight, and nobody can take it back out. This is where the right to repair fight and the road to better iron finally meet. Because every time you invoke that law, every time you use an independent shop, every time you read a European load chart and understand what real engineering looks like, you are voting with your dollars and your wrench against the lock. The manufacturers who trap you are betting you'll stay scared and stay quiet. The ones building honest machines are betting you'll wake up. This is you waking up. Let me tell you what this whole thing really comes down to. After all my years on the inside, you didn't buy a subscription, you bought a machine. You paid for the steel and the boom and the engine and every bolt, and somewhere in the paperwork somebody decided you'd only be renting the right to use it. Tonight you took a piece of that back. And that feeling in your chest right now, that mix of anger and relief, that's just ownership coming home. You're the kind of man who was never built to ask permission to fix what's yours. That's not stubbornness. That's the whole reason you got into this life in the first place. You wanted to run iron that outlives you and answer to nobody but the work. Don't let a red screen and a service writer's script talk you out of who you are. So here's what I want from you, and I'm asking straight because I know this crowd doesn't speak up unless somebody asks. Tell me the worst reset fee or dealer invoice you ever got hit with, the one that still makes your jaw tighten. Drop it in the comments. Name the machine, name the number, and tell me where you're watching from, because I want to see just how far this thing reaches. Every code somebody posts is a code the next man doesn't have to fight alone. And if you're done renting what you already own, subscribe and stand with the rest of us taking our iron back, one machine and one law at a time. Next time, I'm pulling the paperwork on the parts pairing trick, the one where a brand new sensor won't even talk to your machine until the factory says the magic word. I'm going to show you which brands do it, and the shops that have already found the way around it. Bring your worst invoice. We're just getting started. That fault code, the lock screen, the tech miles away. I stop before showing you the way out. Inside the circle, I hand you the full right to repair playbook for your crane fleet, picking up right where we left off. Ask me your own question, and I answer you myself, not some robot. You belong here among thousands already inside. Just point your phone's camera at the code on screen. Cancel any time with one click. If you enjoyed this, do stay a while and subscribe. I have many more videos right here that dig into machines like these, and I think you'll find them just as fascinating.